order the February 2nd, 2016 Board of Selectmen's meeting. I note this meeting is being televised and recorded. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, I would ask them to acknowledge such at this time. Michael Rausch from the Enterprise. Thank you, Michael. All items within the meeting agenda are subject to deliberation and possible vote by the Board of Selectmen. I'd like to go ahead and reopen in an open session. We have just finished an executive session, and now take a moment of silence for our troops and our public safety personnel, please. Thank you all.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any public comment this evening?
There were none requested, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mulvey. I wonder if you might take us through the correspondence, Michael.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Long
Yes,
list tonight.
Sorry.
Long list this evening.
Yeah, I was going to begin that there is, correspondence is very brief tonight. Only 2 items listed here. There's one, a public hearing notice with regard to the property located at 23 Emmons Road, and there's the demolition of a historic structure. The property's been deemed a historic significant building, so there's going to be a public hearing on February 9th, 10 a.m. at the Bourne Historical Center, 30 Keene Street in Bourne. And plans will be viewable here in the town hall, or over in the town hall prior to. Then there's also following that letter from the Bourne Historical Commission. This is a letter that was actually thanking the town administrator and all of us for efforts to support the preservation of the historic Buzzards Bay National Bank facade sign. And that is, I understand that's actually going to be relocated someplace
My
else.
understanding, I haven't heard a lot of the detail about it, Mr. Blanton,
But that was a very well-written, nice thank you letter, particularly recognizing the work of Mr. Garino. And I think that's all that we have with regard to correspondence, sir.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions or comments on the correspondence? Hearing none. I would like to welcome Laura Kelly from POCA, which is Protect Our Cape Cod Aquifer. I'll speak to us tonight about the spraying injunction and a halting of the spraying by Eversource, and I'll let you take the podium. And welcome.
Hello, thank you. Hi, I'm Laura Kelly. I live in Northeastham, so I want to thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm the director of POCACapeCod.org. That stands for Protect Our Cape Cod Aquifer, because it's up to us to do just that. This evening, I would like to ask 2 requests. My first request being that when the YOP for Eversource, that's the yearly operational plan, comes out, it usually comes out in December. It didn't come out in January, so we're still kind of waiting for the YOP for 2016. I want to thank you for writing against the YOP 2015. You're a part of a collective of all 15 Cape Cod towns. Thank you. My request is to do the same thing again. It can be as simple as changing the date, updating selectmen's names, etc. But what we want to do is to continue to prove that we don't want this happening in towns. Of course, the state, MDR, Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, it's up to them. And what's been happening is the state's overriding the towns. So we want to continue to keep abreast of all this and do as much writing as possible. But as you can tell, it hasn't changed a word. It's been 3 years. Eversource has sprayed herbicides on our power lines for 3 years in a row. They're working on the VMP, which is the Vegetation Management Plan. That's 5 years. So instead of writing and thinking that's going to change anything, isn't that the definition of insanity? Expecting a different result? We took Eversource to court October 1st. I found a pro bono lawyer, Bruce Taub, attorney from Orleans, willing to also be pro bono for every town, all 15 Cape Cod towns. We took 3 abutters on October 1st to Barnstable Superior Court. We asked that the 3 abutters be exempt from herbicidal applications. They were granted that. Then we asked that all herbicides from the bridges to Provincetown be exempt. If you read the paperwork I sent you, it does say denied, and that's the part that's denied. It was written for the abutters. What we want to do now is go back to the towns, get the towns involved, and write them for the towns. So there's things going on where they're violating their own written regulations.
Excuse me.
One is quite obvious, and putting this in front of a judge, he exempt them. There's a 50-foot rule. No spraying allowed within 50 feet of drinking water. That's a private well. 100 feet for a public well. What about 50 feet this way? 100 feet this way? Our aquifer is well within that. Presenting this to the judge after the judge decide, and that's my request number 3, is to simply ask permission from the selectmen to have my pro bono lawyer, Bruce Taub, have a discussion with your attorneys, your town council, to see if you do want to move forward or not. At this point, 12 towns have said yes. They would be glad to have discussions just to learn, to be educated more about it. Whether it comes, Brewster's the first. That was in November. I visited Brewster and Orleans. They're on the forefront of this. They're in the process of learning CMMR 333, VMP, YOP, regulations, the state level, whatever source is writing, and deciding what the language is going to be. We're hopeful that a town will write an injunction. Perhaps it'll be something that all the other towns wish to be a part of. Or if the legislation isn't the way a town wishes to represent, then they can write their own. What we're offering is education for free and representation for free. It's up to every town to decide how, what level, how fast, et cetera, et cetera. The game plan is to do this during the comment period. When is that? We don't know. The comment period usually comes out with the YOP, 30 days. We've asked it for extensions for the last 3 years, and we were granted up to 45 days. So there is a little bit of window of time. I'm coming ahead to all 15 towns before the YOP in hopes that we start the education, get the ball going, learn more about this, and to be able to make a move that would actually make a difference, because the thousands of gallons that they're spraying on our power lines is unnecessary above an aquifer. So I come here today asking for a little paperwork and then a conversation, and where it goes after that will be up to your town council. Questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ellis.
thank you for coming here and enlightening us. I do have a question. Are any towns that you've discussed this with opposed to this at this point?
I'm going to say the town of Yarmouth that I just visited last Tuesday is not aware of the situation and invited me to come back. They got all the handouts that you got, and they didn't do their homework. So they said, what YOP? When? You know, and so it was, you know, down here, and we're building our way up. I'm going back in 4 weeks.
Good.
I'll be back on their agenda again, and perhaps another town will be, you know, the way I see it is some towns are leaders and some towns are followers. It's great. As long as we protect our natural resources, that is the game plan here. We don't understand the effects, and it's unnecessary. It's the #1 largest amount on Cape Cod. I mean, homeowners, yes, but to get to every individual homeowner, it's a lot harder than one company. And in an area where you can go back to mowing, that's what they did. Once every 7 years was mow. It isn't until now, 3 years in a row. There used to be 13 towns last year, 9 towns the year before, 8 towns the year before that. in a plan that they're saying they're using less over time, we don't see that happening at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Blanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming, Laura. I appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
making the trip down. And is the primary kickback that you hear from Eversource really a cost prohibition factor? Is that what it is? They say that the herbicide treatment, does it decrease the costs of mowing and the necessity for it? What's the primary argument you hear from them?
They have not said that once to us. We asked that. We would love to have that proven. There's no analysis. It's been 3 years. We would love to see what happened on our land in those 3 years. At this point, it's not about the money. It's easier, is what they say. Oh, we've done this in many other parts of New England. This will be using less over time. There's always going to be seeds. The wind's always going to blow. There's always going to be new vegetation growth, unless you really killed all the bacteria, all the living organisms, and then no seed can grow. So there's two possibilities times 10 years, times 20 years of this constant spraying, is we could create, a Dust Bowl effect along our power lines and nothing can live. Sure, then sure, there's no reason to spray. Or there'll be continual, you're going to have to spray. There'll be the pines, the oaks, things that will ultimately take down our electrical source. So, there's so many other alternatives. Even the town of Mashpee has actually said that they would go forward and take the cost and go and hand prune or mow themselves. Towns are really going forward, trying to think about other alternatives, what's going to work with them. I wish that there was a, town of Truro, it's this cost. Eastham, it's this cost. Orleans, it's this cost. Per acre is this amount of money. Each town has different vegetation. Sure. So it's not just a math formula. So I don't think that it is a cost benefit. They have not stated that. They've not proven that. It's the fact that they believe they're going to use less over time, and it's a program that's worked off of Cape Cod on organic matter. Is what they say, organic soil. What's that mean? They've got not sand, but they have soil. We have sand. We have an aquifer. We have different conditions that on the other side of the bridge, So we've got to think about what works on our land and do what we need to do to protect it.
I appreciate that. If I might follow up, Mr. Chairman, because of our soil conditions, because they are so unique, because we do have such a sandy soil, and we do have a sole source aquifer, and that's where we receive all of our clean drinking water now, I'd agree with you that this needs to be done.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Meyer?
have you considered working with the local boards of health? Because the town of Bourne Board of Health has a no spraying policy that I was made aware of.
Great.
So you may want to see if you can work with them as well to strengthen your resolve.
Sure.
And this is a motion for a grant of a TRO, which was denied. Has this been marked to go to trials? Was there enough to go forward to a full trial on this? Or did this die once the TRO was denied?
We went from the 3 abutters to the towns. So at this point, we're allowing the towns to make a move. Again, I believe Brewster will be the first. So the case is not closed, to answer your question. It's still open. Okay. It'll be the end of February, I believe. There's the 25th, I'm going to say. It's open until a particular date at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Picard?
So, just to refresh my memory, because I'm getting old, item number 2, we have already done that.
We have done it in years past,
Years
and
past.
I think the board would
2015.
probably ask that that be done again.
Okay, that's fine, I don't see it. In your, January 26th email outlining what you'd request, you indicated that Brewster and Orleans are on board, but there's, how many others?
I can do this.
Well, I don't need the names, but there are another 12,
I'm going to say 12, yes.
another 12 that you've met with since this meeting that have already signed on.
So that leaves, if I can, that would leave Yarmouth and Bourne.
Yep, and then Barnstable.
Oh, Barnstable.
There's
okay.
15 towns. Barnstable is the last one.
I'm just, number one, a point of concern would be, generally when we have an attorney work as special counsel to our town council, that person generally works under the direction of our town council. I'm not sure that your I'm trying to think of the name, what do you call it, pro bono attorney is apt to do that. Not sure. Plus, we get into a lot of, we are now realizing we are getting into a lot of issues that maybe are more specific to abutters than the entire community. And to expend funds on that, I'm not sure that the town is in a position to expend any more legal fees to fight. But that's just my observation. I think it's, it's probably a good idea, but again.
If I may explain real briefly, the advantage of having Bruce could represent your town if your council wishes to go that route is that he's aware of all the regulations. If your town council wishes to represent your town, that's fine. It takes a little time. So that's the money factor. It's cost less than $1,000 to file in court for town. It costs us over almost $2,000 for the 3 abutters, but the costs are less per town. Go figure. Paperwork. Other than that, what we're trying to do is really have this be less than $1,000. But again, it's up to you. If you wish to use your own lawyer, whatever her costs are, that's again up to you guys. So we are trying to keep this under control financially, to let you know.
Mr. Blanton and then Mr. Picard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't see where there's much to be lost with regard to engaging our town council to have a conversation with Attorney Taub and discuss where we might be if we decide to pursue this. I certainly, and there's no cost involved in this board, this body, continuing to write our letter of support in favor of writing a letter to MDR in opposition to Eversource's spraying. So I would make a motion that we
Let's do 2 if you would, just so we.
write a letter of support in opposition to Eversource's spraying in line with the suggestion here.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the Board of Selectmen to prepare to write to the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources a letter in opposition to Eversource's yearly operational plan.
Please wait until the YOP comes out. Read
Yeah.
the YOP, make sure not one word is changed, and
Yeah.
do so. Thank you
We'll
very
do
much.
that.
And I will be in touch with you to let you know when that comment period is and just send it out within that 30-day frame. Perfect.
Okay. Is there questions on that motion, Mr. Garino?
No, not on that motion, no.
Okay. Comments, questions from the gentleman on the board? Okay.
Oh, one other quick comment. Some towns are communicating with my lawyer through a phone conversation, 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, depending on the questions and the explanations. Other towns, Orleans had us in a situation like this with the selectmen, with the town council, and with us, all in a room, so we could kind of have it all on the same page, let's say. So it's really up to each town to decide how they're most comfortable to take the next steps. How much involved they want the selectmen to be, how the selectmen speaks with their council, et cetera, et cetera. So just to let you know, every town's different, and it's just been an amazing experience. But please know that the 20-minute conversation is a great place to start to just see if you want to move forward.
Okay, one step at a time here. Let's question Mr. Blanton.
Or just a statement, rather. I just want to remind the board that not only is this, generally speaking, a good step for us to take control of public water safety and in general, but we've also been approached specifically over the past several months from some residents in the Bourne-Dale area who are very concerned about the Eversource spraying up along the power lines in their area. So this is not something that's just a general concern for the Cape, but it's also a specific concern for some residents right here in Bourne that's been expressed to us recently.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Mr. Greeno.
interject a couple of things. One, the selectmen have always been very supportive of those residents and their concerns relative to the power line spraying.
Thank you,
Thus,
Mr. Greeno.
We've
Yep.
written the letters each year. But I have a question, if I could, and I asked this last year, not to you, but to folks. There is a 30-year history of what was Northeast Utilities, okay? Spraying on power lines out in some state forest land that goes into the Quabbin. 30 years ago, they stopped this, okay, and they did selective cutting. Is there any work through POCA to learn from how they did this back in 1980 some odd, and it still continues today, so that we're not reinventing the wheel on selective cutting, or some places use sheep even, but I mean, that's not what they do out there, but they do a selective cutting on the power lines through the Wendell and New Salem State Forests that go toward the Quabbin. So the aquifer issue is similar.
Right.
The feeder to the aquifer, to the reservoir, is similar. And I'm just wondering if there's any meshing of the minds on that, so that, you know, you're not having to reinvent the wheel.
I appreciate it. I have not gone back and done that. We are in a situation where they always mowed once every 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't until 3 years ago that they came up with using herbicides. So for here, this is new. Go back to mowing. It's really simple. There are other counties, as you mentioned, that they use goats. You know, and so there's other alternatives for sure. I get what you're saying, don't reinvent the wheel. On every easement that I've read, because I've been knocking on doors for months now on the weekends, not one easement says with the use of herbicides. So I don't know if that holds up in court or not. I'm sure it'll get said or done somewhere along the line, but you know, it's things like that that don't change the legislation. Let's update things. So I appreciate it, and I will absolutely look that up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would look to Friends of the Earth too, because they were very involved with that.
Oh, good. Thank you. I will do that. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments on the motion before the board at this time? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And do you want a motion for her? The motion to authorize town council to speak with their attorney?
Making a motion?
I have a question first, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Please. Yep.
Could you give us a little bit of a background on the Protect Our Cape Cod Aquifer organization?
Sure.
You signed this, you're the director.
Yep.
What's the membership? Is it a membership like the Friends, the trustees of the reservations, or is it you and other folks that are just interested in this?
What started off as concerned citizens coming together saying, what can we do? And it's been 2.5 years, it was in the summer, that we created a name and a title and a mission statement and a website, you know, did that all explanatory type stuff. It's grown to thousands of people. If you look on our website, the last page has supporters, donators, we don't list everybody that connects with us with questions, or we don't have members or memberships, $25 fee, nothing like that. This is a voluntary situation. People come to meetings, they speak. We've got an advisory board, president, vice president, secretary, got funding, we do benefits. We got enough money to bring Eversource to court in October. Thank you, everybody who donated. And so it's a growing organization. We were very educational in getting 8 towns to monitor and lessen the amount of fertilizer. It became bylaws, thanks to the EEA that opened it up for a year. We asked for an extension for a second year, and we got 8 towns involved. This is great. We want to lessen the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in our waters. Of course, our biggest thing is Eversource, and that might take a good decade before we get there. But we really believe this is the first time with the pro bono lawyer that we actually can change something in court. And we're doing other things like pharmaceuticals. So we're doing what we can to protect drinking water. Right now, you can only bring your pharmaceuticals to police stations. You can't bring your extra outdated, et cetera, unused to like CVS or to where you actually get your prescriptions. That stopped last spring, so we're bringing awareness to that. We have lots of neat little things like that that we're doing along the way. So tomorrow, one other thing, we wrote a Bill of Rights. 15 of us went and became educated at CELDEF. That's the Community Environment of Legal Defense Foundation.org, where we learned how to write rights and write laws. So we did just that. We took a year, every Monday night at my house, got together with an overhead, and we wrote 2 pages of a Barnstable County Bill of Rights. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we present it to the Assembly of Delegates. This will really change things. And then, of course, the other thing that we do is we support Dan Wolf's bill, number S478, which really, it isn't perfect, I'll admit it. It loses its teeth in the last paragraph, but it is the next best thing. It's helpful in the herbicide issue that we all have. So POCA's growing and continuing. We're only 2.5 years old, but we've done a lot of changing local laws already. So anybody that wants to check it out, please do, and come on along, join the fun. This is for next generations. This is because I want to drink the water when I'm older. It's really simple, but it's taken a lot.
Other questions?
Tom has his hand up.
No, if the board is going to consider this as an action, I would suggest that if you do vote this to allow Attorney Taub to speak with Attorney Troy at his, at a mutually convenient time, and have Attorney Troy then brief the Board of Selectmen as to the outcome.
All right. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion that we ask the town administrator on the town's behalf to speak with Attorney Troy about setting up a dialogue with Attorney Taub over the oversized spraying.
Second that.
I'm going to just add to the end of that and then brief the board on the results of that discussion. And I have a motion that's been made and seconded by Mr. Blanton. Discussion on that motion. Okay, we understand we're not entering into the filing. We're just looking at
not going to court yet. Sorry, guys. That's the next round.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Well, we haven't voted yet.
We haven't voted.
All those is there any further discussion on that motion? Comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much for coming this evening, Ms.
I
Kelly.
thank all of you. Thank you very much for helping to protect your citizens and beyond, the visitors too.
Thank you.
Be well. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for your patience.
Excuse me.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the appointment of Lori Cooney to the Recreational Committee. Is she here this evening?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman. This
Would the term
It's
expire?
not in the packet or anything. What's
Just
the,
give us a
what
term date.
term date, please?
June 30th, 18.
6/30/18. And there's a full Recreation Committee act,
There's a vacancy, there's a spot for it.
okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the board appoint Lori Cooney as a member of the Recreation Committee for a term that will expire on June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now have on our next item is a request from Pizza by Evan for a new location. Is there anybody here from, good evening, how are you tonight?
Good evening. Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So this is a transfer of a common victular, or, yeah, it was formerly the Hacienda? Is that
Yeah, and
correct?
before that, it used to be the Craigville Pizza in
Craigville
Mexican
Pizza,
for
yeah.
many years.
Yeah, what is it?
So it was closed for a couple of years, and now we try to bring it back, doing pizzas and Mexican again, so.
So you have two Pizza by Evans in Bourne now?
Well, I sold that place over 20 years ago, and
Okay.
now we're doing a DBA, this one, so we don't have confusion in the area.
Okay.
But we're gonna be doing also breakfast, Mexican and pizza, so we have a different name for that reason, yeah.
You want to go through
Yeah, and first looking at the application, it appears to be complete. It provides insurance. It has a sketch of the room, as well as a resume of the gentleman before us, Mr. Golfaminos.
Yes.
And we have a routing slip that is one of our requirements. I note that the Board of Health indicates that you need to have an inspection
Correct.
prior to the opening, and I believe the fire department has indicated that they would like to have a final inspection with you before opening.
Right, we have everything completed, we're just waiting for the chief to show up, we'll call them, so.
Okay, I would move approval of the common victular license for Pizzas by Evan hyphen Hyannis Inc., DBA Village Pizza and Mexican.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion that's been made and seconded to approve the application of Pizza by Evan and Hyannis for DBA Village Pizza and Mexican. This is located at 4 Barlow's Landing Road, Unit 10 in Pecasset. Any further discussion or comments on that? Anything from the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck. We wish you
Thank
well. I
you.
look forward to the opening.
Thank you very much, in 2 weeks.
You're to be congratulated. It's very excellent pizza.
Yes. Great to see you come back.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, the first being on the Selectmen's business, the signing of the March 1st, 2000.
Additional, I believe you have an amendment. You did not
I have the
an
amended.
Then discussion possible adoption of selectmen's goals.
Yeah, that was, C,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
That's under. Oh, we have new ones, okay.
We have new ones?
Let me take that.
Mine says amended, so I,
So we have, well, actually, this is amended, so right now, Selectmen's business is the signing of the presidential warrant, which is formally number 9.
yeah, I'm just following the playbook.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Don't want anything to fall through the cracks.
I don't think I've ever signed a presidential primary warrant.
I think you did once.
Oh, all right.
Oh, wait.
Do we have to vote on this, Mr. Guarino, or we just sign it?
You need to vote to sign the.
All right,
president's-
is there a motion,
I
gentlemen?
would
to-
move that the board sign the presented document from, I presume, the
Clerk.
town clerk, relevant to the presidential election primary, which will be held the first day in March of 2016 between 7 o'clock a.m. and 8 p.m. to cast votes for the presidential primary and the candidates for the political parties of those offices. And that would be presidential preference, state committee man, Plymouth and Barnstable District, state committee woman, Plymouth and Barnstable District, and town committee members, town committee consisting of 35 members for the Democrat Town Committee, 20 members of the Republican Town Committee, 10 members of the Green Rainbow Town Committee, and 10 members of the United Independent Party.
Second.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that.
I'd be happy to.
Any further discussion on the motion that's been made to go ahead and sign the primary presidential
Mr.
warrant?
Chairman, I just remind the board there are 4 or 5 sheets
That's right.
that need to be signed, so
Yep.
as it comes through.
You have
Do you have the original that we want us
I
to sign?
do.
the original? Okay. All right.
You can actually sign all of those things now because they're all approved.
And we've,
Is there any, we have a motion, gentlemen, that's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
There is something I'd just like to bring up that the town clerk brought up to me, since we are talking about this. There is now, as you will see on this, there is now the United Independent Party. And I believe that includes people who are registered as independents.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to, I believe, vote in either the Democrat or Republican town, or to vote for, to take a Republican or Democrat ballot, you have to be either that party or unenrolled, I believe. So that's something new.
Yeah, independent is an
Independent,
independent.
yes.
This is the independent party that was established in the last election where they received 3%
Right.
of the overall vote. Evan Falchuk ran at that point, so.
Isn't that nice?
Okay. Shall we go ahead and get started with the next item, which is the review of the funding and transfers for Article 11 of the February 8th, 2016 special town meeting?
Linda is here. This was presented to the Finance Committee last week. It's a little different than what the board discussed, so you will need to read that. Don, I think we have one.
I do, thank you.
And if Linda could come up or not. So there are a couple of changes. If you look at the top of the piece, those are primarily the issues that you voted last week. In an effort to try to fund some of this a little bit, and there were a couple of other things based on prior minutes that I will discuss with you as well. We are transferring and therefore by eliminating and offsetting some of these expenses with the Human Resource Coordinator position salary, which the selectmen have been very clear is not something that we can afford to fund right now. I think we need to visit that as soon as practically possible in the future as well. So there'll be some offsets from that. If you go back, there's $115,000 that would be transferred from the ambulance fund, correct, to the salary line of the fire department. And if I take you back to December 1st, when the Board of Selectmen voted to keep the SAFER grant, and it was also decided at that time to have the Sheriff's Department continue with the dispatch. The original, if you remember, the original thought from the SAFER grant in the budget cuts for the override, was that the fire department would take over fire dispatch at the station. It was determined that wasn't the best thing to do. That was part of the original reductions of the budget that the fire department had come forward with $115,000 from that as an offset and $105,000 from overtime going into the next fiscal year. Back on December 1st of 2015, I indicated to the board, I'll read from the minutes, Mr. Picard spoke about the cuts to the town has to make, the cut the fire chief has to make to his budget, and if we are not cutting these firemen, where is the money going to come from? Mr. Guarino stated that would look to use a portion of the ambulance fund to offset the additional cuts. Mr. Picard's concern is that other departments would have to take the hit in their budget to fund the fire department to keep the 8 grant-funded firemen on duty, and that's why we were transferring from the ambulance fund. So that is what is shown here, based on what we discussed back in December. The DNR salary and wages was something that should have been reduced at the last meeting, and it was not, so we need to make up for that. There is a person gone there. Half of that is from the DNR salary and wage line, and the other half is out of the waterways fund. And then there will be less unemployment than anticipated that we need to spend out. It is a transfer out, and it really covers what we look right now as we're trending as a shortfall into the group insurance line, and that will pretty much offset that. So if you take the 432, 232, at the top of the page that included the snow and ice and the school department, the library, and all those types of things, and you do the subtraction of the 52, the addition of the 115, subtraction of the 142, 993, and the next two items, and then the addition of the group insurance, it brings you to the 470, 711. These are the types of transfers and things that we normally would do at a special town meeting. The last town meeting was a little different because it dealt specifically with the reductions that we had to make in the budget. The selectmen have authorized the 432 to 32, and the offsets show in the other areas below.
Question.
Mr. Meyer.
Based on the winter we have so far, it hasn't been too bad. I know that New England weather can change on a dime, but what would, if we were to take the snow and ice out in entirety and not do it to the May special town meeting, would it hurt us at all right now?
Well, the last storm without materials ran about $45,000 just in labor and contract plows. It was about 45 grand plus materials. We were already over the 92,000 by some 20,000 up or down, some on that. I don't have the number in front of me, just in the ordering the salt. I expect that we will go out again. I mean, I don't think we're going to be done with winter. We're going to hit this 150,000 plus 90, the 92, which is already gone, fairly easily. Can you do it the other way? Absolutely, you can do it the other way. The intent was, as we went back, if we go back in time through the override, and some of the things we discussed and some of the adjustments we were going to make and some of the things we talked about with the financial policies and with, not the policies per se, but during the discussions of that over the course of the last year or so, was to get this area to get this line item to an area that was realistic. This is a step up. It will be stepped up again. As you know, as you've seen in your budget, it is stepped up again in the DPW snow and ice area of the budget. So any of these things you can do at any particular time. There's no law or whatnot that would tell you not to do them later. Linda and I believe that based on the intent of the selectmen at not too long ago, and where we are with the insurances, that this just seems to make sense. It's not overly, it's not arduous, it's not adding a substantial amount of money to the original vote at all, and it's doing a lot of offsets from existing funds. Is that fair, Linda? Am I missing something?
Mr. Picard,
I'll let him go.
and then Mr. Ellis. Mr. Picard.
So if I get what Mr. Myers said, as I'm trying to look at this, you look at the top 12 items that were voted subtotal of budget adjustments for 432, 232. Mr. Meyer is suggesting that we delay the snow and ice expense?
Yes.
To May? So that would then reduce that to to
282.
To 282? Okay. So, but what we're looking at now, we've already voted that, but we could change that, we could amend that. But we're looking at human resource salaries, a reduction of 52, or is that a reduction?
Yes.
Reduction of 52,230. Looking to add 115 to fire salaries. Looking to reduce only 17,993 from DNR salaries and wages, and then unemployment expenses of 125, and then adding group insurance of 118, correct? And these budget adjustments just bring it up to another 38,000 over and above the 232.
Correct.
So, why don't we just wait until May to do this at the special town meeting?
I think there's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. It's a pay me now or pay me later. It makes, based on specifically the fire department, it is fulfilling what was discussed and adhered to, agreed to, when the vote, this was during the discussion on the vote on the SAFER and what we would have to do. It was on the motion to terminate the SAFER grant at that time, and we discussed what we would have to do to make that happen. And the board voted 2 to 3, 3 to 2, if you will. The motion failed to keep the SAFER grant.
Right.
This was part of that. And I think it adds clarity. I think it adds transparency to what we said we were going to do. And we're finishing up a piece of business that we told the residents what we were going to do and what was going to happen and what we were going to have to do as a result of keeping the SAFER grant and the override failure.
So, if I might, just another question. You look in here at unemployment expense, group insurance expense. Those are shared costs? So, we are either taking, if we're taking money out of shared costs for the town side, does the school then get to choose what?
The unemployment is, we raised the unemployment at the special town meeting because there was all the.
Right, because of the cuts,
listed, But
right.
since then, it's been, especially if some of the votes go back, I think there'll be less people that were totally laid off than we thought would be in the beginning. And then, because there wasn't as many people laid off, there would be less money, that we took the money from the health insurance line.
Yeah.
So we're just moving it back from one to the other. That can wait till, I mean, that was just a bookkeeping thing, and go to the end. It's not increasing, it's just going from one to the other, and it's both within shared costs.
Right. Well, in May, we would know what our snow and ice costs would actually be. We don't know that now. So if we were to look at Mr. Meyer's suggestion of backing 150 out of that 432, 232, we would end up with 282, 232.
Correct.
And would that not allow other budgets that needed funding to be able to
Well,
appreciate anymore?
if I might, Mr. Chairman?
You please, because I'm going to jump in a minute.
Okay.
This is getting out of,
My concern with that is and the board will do what it will. It doesn't allow us to add any more money to other budgets because you're going to come back in May and have to pay this anyways. And I'm pretty sure it will
Yeah.
be more than the 150. It's going to snow. I'm pretty sure it's going to snow before we're done. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's like the winter we had 4 years ago, but.
if I'm right, the balance of that account right now is about 60 or 70 grand. So you have,
In the hole,
no, if we add the 150.
okay, I'm sorry.
You've got enough for 2 more small storms
one more medium
and
storm.
1 more, right,
And if I may clarify, including this 150.
with the 150.
Okay.
We're already in the hole.
Yeah,
We've already spent more than the 92,000.
we're not gonna be able to put that in other areas to offset some
Sorry
other
I jumped in,
budget
gentlemen.
issues, I don't think. I think, live within what we've indicated we would do. The others, if the board wants to hold on the transfers, you can certainly hold on the transfers. I think it's, pay me now, pay me later. It's going to happen either now or in May. I just think it makes sense to me. We said, this was part of what we said was gonna happen back in December. I think the fire transfer needs to happen. The group insurance can wait, but I think you also wanna get that HR salary off the books to help offset some of the costs that we're putting into this. And that was the intent, was to take money that's not going to be spent, that's not going to be turned back, and offset some of these costs. That was the whole intent of doing that.
Plus, we have savings going forward with the proposed state budget, you know, with the Upper Cape vote.
Well, that I'm gonna get into a little bit in my report. The monies that the Board of Selectmen put back in the budget, that's not for this particular item. We've been able to find that money, because the tech school came down and an adjustment in one of the other line items that not gonna have an effect, so.
Mr. Blanton and then Mr. Ellis.
Right.
I think I'm going to go ahead and pass. I was also going to make the suggestion that we continue to, with Mr. Meyer, Mr. Picard's suggestion, that we back the snow and ice on out and adjust that maybe later on in May when we know what the exact cost is. I think town administrators are indicating that it's pay now or pay later, but I think paying later, we'll be able to fine tune what that number is better. And I'd like to hope, as you
It'll be
would.
more.
I'd like to hope it'll be less, but sure, that may be too optimistic.
What it's gonna be, but I think we have to. So,
Mr. Ellis,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Am I correct, Tom, that these numbers, 432, 232, these are your numbers?
These are my numbers and the numbers that the board, and working with the school department, the 139,916.
Yeah, this is what you brought forward to us.
That's what we brought the last meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Picard,
no, I was just gonna add to and it also includes the additional recreation expenses, right?
For the May,
So that,
for the summer, yeah, to get it started, yes, sir.
And
and the council on aging wages. So it's not only what the town administrator brought to us, Mr. Ellis, it's what the
Yeah.
board.
Board of
voted as
Selectmen
well.
added as well,
Yeah.
correct, Mr. Picard?
So,
Thank you for that.
I have a hard time with, I mean, I think we can do a lot of this in May, and,
I would like to just jump in then, because if you look at the budget we passed in October, and I think Mary Jane might want to talk to this point too, that particular budget funded many of these line items at these amounts less. So I'm saying to you right now that if we do not fund, for instance, the Council on Aging salary and wages of $22,000 at this time, that you really cannot run in a deficit spending because you have not funded that particular line item for the Council on Aging bus. Likewise with salary wages, library salary and wages. you're essentially running off the budget that we passed in October if this is not undertaken at this time. I think that would be my recognition by postponing any action on this particular article, whether it's all or in part.
I'm not talking about postponing. I'm talking about say if I were the king, I would say the adjustments that only total $38,479 that the administrator is that has requested, I would say that we table that until May, and I would say that we jump on Mr. Meyer's suggestion that we back out the snow and ice expense till May, and therefore make this total budget adjustments to 82, 232. But that's if I were the king.
Okay. I don't understand, well, if I might, I don't understand the benefit of that, knowing that it's barely February 1st. We've still got 5 or 6 weeks of winter before us. The worst thing that can happen is we don't get any more snow, and you'd be able to carry any balance, which is approximately $50,000 or $60,000 at this time, if we don't spend anything else, into next year. I don't see the benefit of postponing the ability for the townspeople to see these expenses and give them an opportunity to vote on them.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
the only other concerns that I have is I think it's appropriate to offset money that we know we're not going to use. It will close to free cash, or we can offset some of the expenses that we have now. And I think that's an appropriate use of what the human resource money that has been appropriated for this year, that we utilize it in this year to offset some of the additional appropriations that are being recommended. I also think it's very important from a transparency perspective that you do what we said we were probably going to look at, which was to take money out of the ambulance fund to offset the cut that the fire department did not have to make because they were not taking over dispatch. If there's any balance left in the salary accounts, they go back to free cash. But I think we said this is, the board can do with what it will, but we indicated this is what we were going to do. It was so voted based on the discussion. That particular issue wasn't voted separately. And if the board chooses not to do that now, that's fine. I was just trying to follow up on what the board said what its intent was.
You have Mr. Hilberg and Mr. Spector.
Yeah, I'm not finished. What concerns me, gentlemen, is a week ago, we sat here and this board voted to add money to the expenses. And now you're arguing about whether you're going to bring forth an article to town meeting for known expenses that we previously approved, and known expenses that we're going to incorporate, we're probably going to encumber during the next several months. I don't understand the logic behind it. How can we sit here and tell everybody we want to hire lifeguards next year, or we want to keep the Council on Aging building open, but we don't want to pay for snow and ice? I mean, what's the logic?
It's optics.
Optics.
And public safety with regard to lifeguards, if I may be.
Okay, so we're going to pretend it's not going to snow.
We're not pretending that, Mr. Mealy. I think what we're doing is we realize that we can do this in May when we have a better idea of what it will be.
Well, gentlemen, anything else? Madam Chair. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. The Finance Committee has not voted on what was presented last week. There were, we had quite a lengthy discussion about it, and there were a lot of concerns raised on a number of different points based on what was presented. Before I kind of get into some of the numbers, I want to make a couple comments about some of the statements that have been made tonight by the town administrator. on December 1st, when the Safer Grant discussion was happening, and I believe he said, in quoting the meeting of December 1st, that he would look to use a portion of the ambulance fund for funding the $115,000 salary reduction, which everyone had agreed that there would still be a salary reduction, or there would be a reduction in the fire department, but as of December 1st, it had not yet been identified. At that time, my recollection is that the town administrator stated he had found maybe $50,000 or $60,000 in the budget that could be reduced, but he hadn't identified all of it, and that he would look to use a portion of the ambulance fund. I do not know the status of the fire department budget and haven't been given the actuals on that budget to know what the adjustment should be and how it should be done. And on that particular line, I would prefer to have it go through and get more accurate in terms of what the actual spending is before we decide how we do it, and whether there is anything else in that budget that can be reduced to make up the budget that we had talked about having from the fire department. On the snow and ice, one of the points that was made in the difference between the override, passing an override, and going the reduction scenario, was that if we passed the override, we would be able to increase the snow and ice budget to fund it at an adequate level. But if we did not pass the override, we would not be able to fund the snow and ice budget to cover what was needed by our recent history. So at this point, I would look at the question of the snow and ice and say that when the override failed, it put us in a position of handling the snow and ice the way that we have handled the snow and ice over the last several years, which is at the end of the year to look at all the budgets, to make a transfer to cover the deficit in the snow and ice, and to do that within the scope of all the budgets. So I can understand wanting to supplement that budget, but I'm not sure that this is the appropriate time to do so. I think in the $432,232 that the Board of Selectmen voted, if you took out that $150,000 for snow and ice, what you would be funding is budgets that need to be supplemented at this time in order to provide the services that have been identified by the Board of Selectmen that they want to have provided. The schools have said we need to have $139,000. The town, the Board of Selectmen identified outside of the snow and ice, identified $142,316 of budget items that they felt should be funded in the budget and augmented. So that's the town administrators augmenting that by $7,916. The community building budget by $18,000 so it can be open on Monday and Friday nights. Augmenting the council on aging budget by $22,000 for the bus driver. Augmenting salaries of the library for $15,000. Augmenting the library expenses by $20,000, augmenting the recreation department $4,400 for the initial lifeguard expense for this year, and augmenting the insurance budget for $55,000. What is very, very interesting about this budget augmentation, which would, as Mr. Meyer said, total $282,232, is it would, percentage-wise, come out to a 50% of the increase going to non-school budgets and 50% of the increase going to school budgets. When you start making other adjustments and other increases to snow and ice and fire department and group insurance, then you change that percentage. And if you were to do all of those, if you were to put all of those augmentations, the snow and ice and the fire department and the group insurance, the total increase in the budget would be $665,934. That would be a 79% increase in the non-school budgets, and it would be a 21% increase in the school budgets. Now, I haven't in this calculation put any reductions, but there's nothing to say that if you have $52,230 of human resource budget and $125,000 of unemployment budget that aren't going to need to be spent, that you can't address those and apply those to the $282,232 and only use $107,000 of free cash instead of using $282,000 of free cash. And that is, I think, what the town meeting would like to have us do. To say, we are being very conservative and we are only increasing those budgets that need to be increased in order to provide those services to the community. And we are going to offset and use a very limited amount of free cash. And I think that, to me, and the Finance Committee has not voted this and has not discussed it, but we were very concerned about a $470,000 increase to the budgets when we haven't had a chance to look at any of the budget versus actuals and to really analyze them. So I would say that if the Board of Selectmen were to vote tonight, the $282,232 increase and use the $52,230 of the human resource budget to offset it and the $125,000 of the unemployment budget to offset it, and to use $107,002 of free cash, I think that would be a very conservative way of approaching this that town meeting, I think, would really understand. And at the end of the year, we can straighten out the other items like we usually do. I think it's premature to do so at this point in time. Thank you.
I wonder if for clarity before you sit down, Mary Jane, so you're striking out the 150 to reduce the subtotal of the budget amendments to 282, 232.
Right.
And then in the following, in the human resource salary range, I just want to go down and see what you're doing to it.
Right.
So you're maintaining that reduction
Correct.
as an offset. In the fire department salaries,
I haven't done anything with the fire department salaries. I think the fire department salaries, I think it's premature. I mean, I don't, as far as my recollection was on December 1st, there were $60,000 of reductions that were going to happen from the fire department. And there was going to be a portion from the ambulance. I think at this point, if the Board of Selectmen, I don't know if you looked at budget versus actual in the fire department. I don't know if you know if there's room in the fire department. There was discussion about a reduction in the fire department budget, and in all of our discussions, and I haven't heard anything and seen anything that demonstrates to me that we can't make any adjustment to that budget at this time. I haven't seen it.
okay. And then the next one, the DNR salary reduction of $17,993, you're leaving that.
Well, one of the things about the DNR salary is that position that was in the Department of Natural Resources was a position that was funded by the Waterways Fund. So when we increased the use of the Waterways Fund towards the FY16 budget, that position was covered. So the only way to make that, if you make that reduction to the DNR budget, you're also going to be reducing the Waterways Fund.
Agreed.
So my question for the Board of Selectmen would be, I'm not sure exactly what the income is that we get from mooring fees and beach fees and all those fees that are processed, shellfish fees that are processed through the Department of Natural Resources. But citizens are paying extra fees for those permits. And that money, all that money is going into the town, and part of it was being used to fund this position.
Mm-hmm.
So the logic of cutting this position that is funded through the Waterways Fund, it escapes me. So the position has been cut. If it's unspent money at the end of the year, it's going to be turned back, but it's a reduction, but it's going to be offset by a reduction in the waterways fees, so there's really no change.
Well, the waterways fees is a separate.
The waterways fund.
When this happened back in the fall, it was a mistake.
It's a lot better.
I covered everybody and forgot to cut her position out. So actually, extra money she was going to be cut, she was part of the cuts. And instead, we covered the other girl in the office with the waterway money and all of his part-time people. So that was just, she was let go, and now there's extra money sitting in his salaries.
So we'd have to transfer the
So
money
I
back
actually
into.
took extra money out of the waterways for that position.
Okay, so I asked, so I.
No, I
what
think this
I'm
is a
not,
good
I'm
point.
unclear about it, and we asked at the finance committee to have the accounting of the waterways fund and the accounting of this, so that we could look at it. It's unclear to me, so I just left it out. I mean, I think we were told that there was going to be a decrease in the waterways fund use in the sources and uses that was going to then, so there was going to be a reduction of the budget and there was going to be a reduction of the waterways fund. That's what was explained to us last week.
So money would actually go back to the waterways.
Right. So what I'm
Okay.
saying is the money's in the waterways fund and the money's in the position now. And so what you're doing is taking away, so the money's currently there in the budget. So you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
I'm not sure anyone else does, but I do.
Yeah.
On the unemployment expenses, 125,000.
Gee, thanks.
On the unemployment expenses, that was a late addition. If you recall, just before the town meeting, we put that reduction in that changed us from 979,000 down to 854,000 of reduction. I had actually hoped that we would wait until May and put that in as an actual number. So if you want to apply that now, then it's okay. I mean, it's going to use less free cash, so whether you reduce that now or reduce it later, it's going to kind of go back into free cash. So the question to me was, it's simple to say $282,232 transfer from free cash, or you could say $282,232 and transfer from the human resources salaries, $52,000, and transfer from the unemployment budget, $125,000, and transfer from free cash, $107,002. Either one, I think, is fine, but I would say from that's, I think, where we should be going in this particular town meeting. That's kind of my sense.
Okay, Mr. Greeno, and then I'll open it up to the board. Thank you very much.
You said you were going to open it up to the board.
Did you want to speak?
Well, I
Oh,
just,
Chris, did you want to, I'm sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry. This is coffee.
Welcome.
Thank you. Chris Hilberg, Bourne, and Chair of the School Committee. First, I'd just like to make an overview comment. In the weeds, the last year and a half has been a learning experience for both myself and the folks in the school committee. And the opportunity of recently being able to afford the invitation by you and Mr. Garino to get together with the superintendent of mine just to develop some communications has been excellent. We've had a really good rapport. I like the fact that we have Mr. Blanton and Mr. Meyer attending our school committee budget sub-meetings. Those are also very helpful in developing the flow of communication. And the reason for that is because over the past year or so, during this process of preparing for an override, developing cuts and the process, it seems to me that the school committee's had to fight a little bit for ourselves. There's been some cuts and changes that have been made where the schools seem to have been taking a lion's share of the impacts to the reductions. So through conversations, and the board reacted very quickly during the summer, if you might recall, to amend that situation very quickly, and I thank you for that. So we're here now, again, with another optics, and I'm going to go along with Mr. Selectman Meyer's observation about optics. So here we have a series of cuts, and I just want to reiterate simple math for the public, for my school board that met this past Saturday in a public meeting where we set a workshop and discussed probably 90 minutes of these specific topics to include our very, very near and dear priorities within the schools. And that is that remove the snow and ice, 432,000, it's just about a 50-50 split on what we're restoring to the associative budgets between the town and the schools. Something that we had vetted and communicated through all the different boards and I'm very happy with. So you can imagine on Saturday when we had a little surprise and saw this, the 665 number, and that's really what it is, because regardless of where we're taking the money from, and I understand what the town manager is saying, the town administrator is saying, hey, we discussed this about the ambulance funding, some of the the problem is, it's optics. You're still leaving the schools with the greatest impact as compared to the remainder of the town. And I know that you say you have a hard time understanding as to why we should hold this vote into May. My sentiment is, I've just heard several examples where there's some confusion. There's a possibility, an opportunity to get a little bit more information to present to the town to say, this is where this money is coming from. I do believe FY17 has a bit of a change for us. I'm confident of that. I do believe that we still have some hardships. I also believe that currently the town and the schools are both underfunded to the point where services are being affected. I absolutely believe that. But at the same time, we need to make sure that the appropriation is exactly on target. For example, I would ask to revisit the 125,000 for unemployment. Mr. Merzley, could you tell me exactly where that number came from?
For putting it in?
Exactly, where did you come up with the 125 in that number?
I think back when we looked back at how many people we thought were going to be laid off, we tried to take an estimate of what they could possibly collect based on, there's like a certain dollar amount that per person.
Right, and do you remember, I remember carefully, do you remember where the majority of that money was from? It was from school unemployment cuts. I think 103,000, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if we broke it down, but if that's the equivalent.
Right, and so I find it's peculiar that 103,000 of the 125,000 is being applied to non-school.
No.
I now.
It's being applied to
I'm only trying. I'm only
One at a time here,
trying. I'm
please.
only trying to provide optics.
The optics are, it's going to group insurance, which is also 50. Yeah, I can agree with you in some areas, Mr. Chairman.
Are you saying that the group insurance has increased 118,000 today?
I'd like to, gentlemen, I really want to do this right. This is a very important discussion, so please, Chris.
I'm just asking.
So we are
is
trending.
It trend?
Yes, we are trending. When we looked at where we are today, we are either going to be right on target or we're going to be short. And so
with that 118.
Yes.
And is that consistent with your long-term planning percentage increase?
Well, that's a whole nother discussion that we have dealt with as far as health insurance costs.
That's correct.
Yeah, we had a meeting on that earlier, so I can't go into that, actually.
We had an executive session relative to
health insurance
contracts, and we can't discuss that.
Okay, then forgive me. Then as I'm taking my hat off and as a taxpayer now, I feel it's important that if the board it is my impression that I have to go back and sell this to my board and sell this to my wife. So I need to make sure that I understand what the below 12 line is. If you understand where I'm getting at, is that I just have a hard time understanding the factors, the increase to these. I'm not in disagreement, and I'll tell you why I'm not entirely in disagreement with the factors, and that's because the line of communications is improved for me and the schools and the process that we're working. It's not perfect, but it's better. I just can tell you that the optics are that the schools, again, are standing here saying, hey guys, where's the percentage increase? Where are the schools in related to the majority of the cuts?
Look, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Guarino.
I want to talk, I understand your point. If you're looking at that if everything is to be a 50-50 split, okay? And that's what I'm hearing. I believe we need to increase the snow and ice budget now, regardless of, I think we're disingenuous. Pay me now, pay me later. You're gonna end up paying this out at the end of the year. Well, maybe we always do. But that is not being transparent.
But wait a minute.
Let me.
What's happened the last 10 years?
No, wait a minute, I want to, are you finished, Mr. Bruno?
Well, not yet.
I'm
That's all
sorry.
right.
And I'm okay with that. If you want to put that off till May and we'll transfer 200,000 and that's fine and dandy, but it's, you pay me now, you pay me later. The townspeople are going to pay this bill. The relative piece on the fire department, line item reductions, we talked that we thought we might be able to find 60. I think the dollar amount that I told folks that we had found was about 34 at the time, and that we were gonna go back and look at some more. If you look at where the fire department is spending its money, and that's what Linda and I do, okay, that's what we're paid to do. This seems to be where it's at, and it is a transfer on something we already indicated that we were going to do. So there's no smoke and mirrors there. And I take serious offense to that. No, you didn't,
I didn't either.
but
I will.
I know you will. That, I think, needs to be done. I guess my problem, Mr. Chairman, is that we are trying to, and maybe this isn't the right forum to do that, okay? We are trying to show the folks in town what it's costing to run this operation in a clear and as open way as we can. That's why we presented this the way we did. Did we think of percentages of school in town? No, because there's really no positions being funded here. We're not adding anything. These are snow removal. Which is, everybody benefits from snow removal and clean roads and safe roads. Group insurance is something that is for all of the employees. Unemployment is trending better, and I'm sorry if maybe this year it's 103 in the school, next year it may be less with the school and more with the town. That's why they're shared costs. They're shared costs. Some years are more, some years are less. That's the way. So we don't, I guess, look at it in that particular framework.
Can you just answer one question for me? I stood on a routine basis with you, Chairman Mealy, and Selectman Meyer, and we went and other selectmen at the time, and we went and we spoke for the override 9 or 10 times. And if I'm not mistaken, the override did not, if the override failed, a component of the override was that there'd be no increase in snow and ice. Why are we doing it now when we said when the override failed?
I will answer that because originally we had talked about putting a snow and ice account in of $450,000 based on the fact that we were almost $1 million in arrears from that was one of the contributors to the override. Mm-hmm. Whether we do it now or do it in the spring, I think we've got bills in hand. I think the point of being able to express to the residents in town of how much it costs to run their town is an important one.
It's my opinion, and this is, again, my opinion. This is about optics. I don't disagree with you, Steve, but they have to be paid. I don't disagree with that.
They do have to be paid. And we also told people that if the override didn't pass, we were going to slash the budgets. And here we are coming back in February, and we're adding $400,000 or $500,000 back in. To argue about snow and ice where you have bills in hand, you're already in the negative. I mean, we've already spent more than the $92,000 line item that was originally put in the budget. I mean, it's going to cost us. I'm not sure the optics are worth it. I really don't, because
And
out of
and-
all of these that are in here, out of all these expenses that are in here, that's one that is legitimate, that wasn't included because we didn't have the money when the override failed.
I think the optics are everything, because we're going to stand in front of town meeting and try to tell the people of this town that we feel that we're in a position to restore funding to these areas. They have to believe in that to vote that in favor, if I'm not mistaken. Which brings me to one other question that I have for the board. Is the motion that's being developed, Article 11, I think it's correct, is that motion an all or nothing motion? Is there an opportunity for town meeting members to consider components of the motion? You
It's
probably
an
can
all-encumbered
understand.
motion, but anybody can get up and modify and amend the motion. You can open up the entire budget.
The way the article is worded, the original wording of the article would have limited to certain lines. We got into some things that we thought we needed to do, which is what we're bringing forward. So to do that, we worded the motion so it is open to amend the budget, or to make, okay. The motion will have what we recommend, or what the Board of Selectmen will recommend. Whether the Finance Committee endorses it or not, that's up to what the Selectmen and the Finance Committee work out. That can be amended from the floor,
Okay,
okay?
thank you. And that actually does help my understanding of the process.
Yeah, this isn't a closed,
I think that's important.
yeah.
It is. It is.
So I'm just here to say that I believe the town, through the hard work of this Board of Selectmen and other members, and certainly the town administrator, I think there's been some inroads that have been made to develop a better line of communication. I just want you to understand the optics, that the schools thought that they were participating to the extent of the same as the town, and then there was all of a sudden that there was a couple $100,000 additional monies that were increased above and beyond the snow and ice, because mind you that you already voted the snow and ice at the past meeting. So we considered that and still looked at the ratio, if you will, the development of restoring some of the funding. And then some other monies came into play, and that's where it kind of raised, we came up on our radar, if you will.
I guess transfers and offsets, I see differently, I guess, than the chairman.
It's still money, to me, it's still money coming into different departments. Where the money came from, to me, is immaterial. It's still, at the end of the day, it's probably coming from free cash. We're either restoring free cash or we're not. And it's a simple question and discussion of free cash. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Questions or comments from the board?
Now, so I get rid of this cough.
That's for sure.
We have previously voted to support a budget amendment totaling $432,232 for the 12 previously mentioned and discussed line items throughout the 2016 budget. This evening, we've been asked to now endorse the recommendation from the town administrator and the finance director on the several line items that you've seen before us this evening and discussed. There's been some discussion relative to removing snow and ice in the amount of $150,000. And there's also discussion about the unemployment expenses and the fire department salaries. Town meeting, pre-meeting will take place this coming Thursday. Is that correct?
Three meetings, 3 o'clock on Thursday.
On Thursday. At that particular time, it would be worthwhile to have all of the motions at least finished and prepared for town meeting, although they can be addressed at town meeting. We will make we will post meetings. I'm sure the finance committee will, as they have in the past prior. But I would entertain a motion to either make adjustments to the first 12 items we've already approved and/or to the second that were proposed tonight. Mr. Picard.
Mr. Chairman, I just scribbled this out, so bear with me. I would move that the Board of Selectmen address the article amendment by removing the $150,000 from snow and ice until the May town meeting,
A special town
the
meeting.
Maine special town meeting, 2016, and to transfer $52,232 from the Human Resource Salaries line and $125,000 from the unemployment expense to make the total free cash utilized as $105,002. I think that's correct. If we take 432, 232 minus 150, that becomes 232.
282.
282, 232, less 177, 230, which is the amount of 125 and 552, 230, should bring that to 105,002.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion? I can reread it if you'd like.
Would you like a second on that, sir?
Second.
Yes. Get it on the table?
Second.
Thank you. I got a motion that's made and seconded. Discussion on that motion, gentlemen. Are we ready to vote? Mr. Garino?
I want to strongly recommend to the board that the unemployment expense help to offset the group insurance expense, which is something that the finance director, treasurer, who follows the health insurance, and I are sure is going to be an actual expense. And if you can do it in May, you can, but you're going to end up having to do it. So you can take it out now, and that's fine. The board certainly has the right to do that. That's their, but it's going to come back and you're going to pay it in May. So you're kicking
Kicking the can.
the can down the road of something that's going to have to be expended. In this way, you can offset it, as opposed to offset it. You're offsetting an expense now on the 432,000 by utilizing the unemployment. I don't know what that does to the chairman of the school committee's discussion. It has no bearing on what his concerns were. And the 52,000 from the HR salaries, but you are still going to have this expense from insurance coming due. And I suggest that you are better to transfer it out of a fund that we know will be whole now than to wait to the end of the year, use this money against the, and I appreciate and respect the other folks' opinion on this, I do. It's just a matter of how you want to bookkeep it. What else?
I know, well, if you're gonna let the snow and ice, I know that it could be the same way. If you're gonna let the snow and ice go in the deficit, then we'll let we'll let that go in the deficit until we get to May. We won't know it exactly because the last bills won't come out until the school teachers are paid their summer pay, but we'll know pretty close.
Okay. Anything else, Jenna? Mr. Blanton?
Just gonna say, at that point in time, if it's appropriate, I'm sure we'll address it exactly as need be at that point in time.
All right, we ready?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Meyer?
I'm
I'm just asking for a vote.
Oh, no, I'm asking for a clarification.
Sure.
If these adjustments are made in the next Monday night at town meeting, when will we start to see the effect of some of these, like, for example, this building being open additional hours?
It will take a couple of weeks. I've got Jonathan working with the contractors now to get this open as quickly as possible after the vote.
I just want to make sure the public understands what's going on.
We're already being proactive in the assumption that if it passes, then we're going to try to get this open as quickly as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, gentlemen? Okay, you ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Very good. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. Picard?
Yes.
Mr. Blanton?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
No.
And the chair votes no, 3-2, motion passes. I thank you all, and I thank the audience members for bearing with us as we work through this. Okay, town administrators report. Mr.
We got goals.
Sorry, it's, I'll turn it over to you and Mr. Meyer and to Mr. Blanton.
Michael read last week, so we adopted what Michael read last week. Or
Do we have copies of those?
it was in our packet a few weeks back.
You want to read through them?
I don't have the actual list on me again.
Mr. Chairman, may I recommend that I draft up what the actual outcomes were and the board vote on this on their meeting on the 16th?
I think that's probably a good idea, Mr. Guarino, if the board would.
Sure.
I will meet with Mr. Blanton and Mr. Meyer to be sure that they are correct.
All right.
Happy to do that.
And also, on the selectmen's business, I know it's not here, but just to give the town administrator notice, Mr. Blanton and I are meeting with the rec director on Friday.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, town administrators report. Mr. Guarino.
I wanted to let the board know, and the finance committee chair, since she is here as well, that the audit has been completed. We have the audit report, and we will be calling, for FY15, we will be calling the auditors in at a joint meeting at some time in the near future, certainly after the town meeting, but so that we can go through that. I wanted to let the board know that the development team or the regulatory team has been meeting and trying to put together the issues related to the shack down at Monument Beach. Has been work on that, so I want you to think that that's been let off the radar. The fire chief will be meeting with a representative of the proponent over the next few days as well. So that has been moving along accordingly. We will meet, assuming that the town meeting adjourns on Monday evening. If we do not go into a second evening, just to remind the board, we will have an executive session at 5:30 to start the discussion relative to all of the collective bargaining issues that we have coming up between now and the end of the fiscal year. We have
It's 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 9th.
5:30 on Tuesday.
Tuesday the 9th. Thank you.
You have right now scheduled a meeting for Thursday at 5. There will be some discussion. We're waiting to see if that will come to happen. You are posted, just in case you're posted there.
It's unlikely, I just should add that it's unlikely that that meeting will take place, but we'll get that out to you. Other members are unable to attend.
There are other items that I have for this evening, Mr. Chairman. I will defer as to be sure that I am thorough in my responses to some of the things that have been brought up this evening, so I will defer.
Okay, thank you. Selectmen's reports. Mr. Meyer, anything this evening?
Yes, on Thursday evening, there's a notice from Mass Maritime Academy for a site plan with Conservation Commission to relocate PowerPoint Road down to beyond the baseball field and into the marsh area, and which will come out by the power plant. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I've been made aware by some residents that you're going to be taking more stress on a small road in Tower Lane. Tower Lane can barely hold 2 cars, one in either direction. There's no sidewalk. And now you're going to make it the main road to get any major trucks possibly down onto the campus. And which means we have to look at possibly widening the town portion of Tower Lane. I know the Academy under Admiral Gurnon and
I wonder if I might, Mr. Meyer, you're announcing the meeting, or you're going to?
I'm announcing a meeting, and that I will be there by 1. But as a future, I don't say a future agenda item, but the impacts of this application, I think, is something the board should bring up because of the sensitivity of it. So maybe as a future agenda item, we can talk about or I'll talk to you off stage, since you had a liaison down to the academy, about what the impacts may be.
Certainly, thank you.
If I could just interject on that, the development team of Conservation Commission, and we've met with the Maritime Academy on their proposal a couple of times. There's some question relative to some title issues that town council is looking at and is going to engage a title examiner to review some things as well. So we're on top of that.
Because you may be losing public access parking down there, you know, to the recreation area, so it does impact the residents of this town.
There's some question as to various ownerships, and council will be bringing in a title examiner to look at some things.
Anything else, Mr. Barrett?
Michael and I were at a science fair before we came here tonight, and I will say that it was fun. It was fun to see these kids with the imagination they have. A robot, an actual robot to be seen. I mean, 30 years ago when I was in Bourne High School, you didn't see any of my kids, you know, in my grade designing a robot. And now that, and then we're there tonight judging it, it's amazing. I mean, I know I keep on saying during this comment period that we should take pride in our school sports, but we should take pride in our school's education and go over when we have a chance and see what these kids are doing, because they are doing amazing things.
Thank you. Mr. Picard, anything this evening?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Blanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly to piggyback on to Mr. Meyer's comments, the Science Expo was actually very inspiring. It was great to see kids with their creative minds looking at designs for robots, maglev trains, you name it. There was amazing thought processes being displayed there. And I think it was a testimony to the strength of our science teaching staff and the commitment of the school to look into innovative technologies, innovative sciences, and where careers are going in the future. So it's great to see young minds here in Bourne inspired to continue their education in these ventures. And then to bookend that up against last night's winning victory, 68 to 42?
They won by 25, so.
Bourne Canalman over Upper Cape Tech, so two great Bourne schools duked it out, and it was a great event last night at the Bourne High School. So
It was senior night, actually, at the school.
I thought you were talking about the Democrat caucuses in Iowa. I'd say that's
no,
a tie.
this was far more entertaining.
No flipping of any coins.
Oh, Canal Cup is on Saturday night. We're playing our rival sandwich in hockey, so.
The 34th, isn't it?
So put on your purple and get on down.
Okay. Mr. Ellis, anything to
I'll
say?
pass.
Thank you. Just a reminder that there's a town meeting on Thursday in the lower conference room in Town Hall at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There'll be a special town meeting starting at 7 p.m. on Monday, the February 8th, at the high school auditorium. And we may be having a meeting, if there is no continuation of that special town meeting, on Tuesday evening at 5:30. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I have a entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries chokingly.
Anyone know? I'll try to make that.